This is a film about human rights and how Forum Syd is working for their fulfilment. What role do civil society organisations play, and how can we ensure that our work contributes to change? All development cooperation funded by Forum Syd is based on human rights. People living in poverty are particularly vulnerable to human rights violations. To end poverty, a sustainable society is necessary, where people have the power to change their lives. Only then can human rights be realised. Poverty means that people have been deprived of the freedom to decide over their lives. Lack of resources, power and choices are thus at the core of poverty. Global justice is about the allocation of resources so that the most vulnerable people can improve their lives. To challenge injustice, the underlying power structures must be questioned and reformed. Forum Syd includes gender and environmental analysis in all development cooperation to make it sustainable. So what does this really mean? Let's find out. There are internationally recognized legal frameworks that agree all people are born free and have a set of rights, called human rights. They apply regardless of ethnic origin, skin color, sex, language, religion, sexual identity or political opinion. When Forum Syd works for these rights to be fulfilled, it is called a human rights-based approach and is based on the UN Framework for Human Rights. To fully understand the human rights-based approach, we need to look at the two parties involved. On one side we have the individual. This person is born free with a set of human rights. We call the individual a rights holder. On the other side we have the state, responsible to protect and fulfill these freedoms and human rights. It's a legal obligation that the state takes on when signing international human rights agreements. We call the state a duty bearer. The fundamental mission of the state is to create the prerequisites needed so that the people have access to their rights. This is done by ensuring that no one is discriminated against, for example by establishing the same opportunities for boys and girls to attend school, according to human rights agreements. The duty bearer, namely the state, has an obligation to fulfill the rights of the rights holders. In return, the rights holder has a claim on the state to pursue its mission. In a democracy, one could say that the government has been hired by its citizens to meet the state's obligations. Everyone also has a personal responsibility not to discriminate or offend anyone in their surroundings. From a human rights perspective, we must also respect one another. At the same time, we know that the values, norms, and sometimes even the national law can contradict international human rights agreements. In these cases, the state always bears the ultimate responsibility for changing attitudes, cultural expressions, and traditions that are inconsistent with human rights conventions which it has signed. Forum Syd's work is about strengthening the rights holders' ability to demand accountability for change in cases where rights are being violated. The human rights-based approach is thus about change. Having a human rights-based approach means making contradictions visible by analysing inequalities. We identify who has power over whom in a community or certain context to understand how and when people's freedom to decide over their lives becomes limited. Sometimes the human rights-based approach is about demanding accountability from the state, and sometimes it is about educating authorities at different levels. It is also about changing values, attitudes, and opportunities for people so that power and resources are distributed in an equal and sustainable manner. Key to this is increasing gender equality and sustainable use of natural resources. In a human rights-based approach, the human rights agreements direct what is legitimate or not. For example, today homosexuality in many countries is illegal, even though the international agreements take a stand for the right of people to determine their own sexuality. It is not for us, from civil society organisations, to decide what change is needed. It is the people whose rights are being violated that have the right to describe the problem themselves. Their voices must guide the process of change. Only then will the process of change become relevant. A sustainable change must therefore be rooted in and driven by the individuals whose rights are being violated. It is difficult to change societies on your own. It is only when individuals come together and organize ourselves that we become effective agents of change. Therefore, the human rights-based approach is about the division of roles between the individual, rights holder, and the state, duty bearer. If, for example, the state does not fulfill its mission of education for all, it is not civil society that should start building schools and provide basic education. Our mission is to influence the government to undertake its responsibilities so that both girls and boys have equal opportunities of going to school. We work with changing people's attitudes and behaviours that oppose and hinder equal opportunities for schooling, and at the same time we claim from the state the protection of children's equal access to education. We do this by educating on human rights and through organising people to increase the space for participation in society and for the opportunity to present demands and proposals for change. In that way, we contribute to a just and sustainable world where all people have the power to effect change. Forum Syd has developed a model for different types of results. It is a tool for setting realistic goals for a project and also to visualize the type of change that the project has achieved. The model both illustrates what is happening as we work for change, as well as on what level change takes place, at the individual, at the state level, or within civil society. The model also pinpoints the organizations driving the change. Things happen when we implement activities. Change occurs at various levels, depending on many things. For example, strategies and methods, what kind of context, the activities that take place, and who the activity is targeting. We can call these results that happen in direct connection with an implemented activity. It may be that someone has received information, heightened their knowledge or awareness in a specific topic. This is still not a change, as the person has not yet applied that new information or knowledge. But when the person reacts and begins using the knowledge, then we are approaching a change. Forum Syd's definition of change is that information, heightened knowledge or awareness should be transformed into something. For example, when a person changes their attitude, values, or their views of themselves in relation to the environment. And if that person, furthermore, starts to take action, acting differently, then we have reached the next level of change. It could be, for example, to actively participate in decision-making processes to influence duty bearers. It is the organization's methods and strategies in interaction with the external environment in which the project takes place, which allows the change process to move forward. This applies regardless of the level of change the organization works with or which actors it has chosen to work with. Thus, a part of the human rights-based approach is to increase the knowledge of individual members, employees, to ultimately strengthen the organization's capacity, which in turn can provide increased leverage for the organization to pursue their questions. So, the model helps us to understand and draw lessons from what is actually happening when we conduct our activities. We can ask ourselves important questions. Do our activities have an impact? Why? Why not? Is another approach needed? Do we need to change tactics? The model also makes it possible to describe and communicate the type of change that the specific project has achieved. Experiences are valuable. If we learn from the past, turn it to our advantage and continue to develop the organization as an actor of change, then we can contribute to a just and sustainable world where all people have the power to effect change.